Good evening, St. Louis, and welcome in to the Sports Hub STL studio for just the second time on City Hub. The first time it was when City sold Indy Vassilev, and we did the first ever live reaction show on Sports Hub STL. But here for our post-game show as usual after a City game. It is City Hub post-game and Sports Hub STL, as always, presented by Hot Shots, home of STL sports fans since 1990. All the games, all the time. Find your location at hotshotsnet.com. And, of course, DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Will Bratton. And we got to break down another bad loss for St. Louis City SC. The winless streak reaches 10 games, and they fall 3-0 to Minnesota United, the first of two matches against Minnesota United this week. Will, first reactions, as we always do, on that game.
My initial reaction is let's just not take away much of anything from this match, and let's try and look at the bigger picture of things, because it's just not a match worth analyzing, I think, too much outside of what individuals are worth, considering trying to bring forward and being a sustainable part of the future of this team. Because obviously the way things are right now has to change. You got to move personnel. The summer window is probably going to shake up this roster a lot at this point. Unless things drastically change within the next, I would say, 2 weeks. By the end of the month, if things haven't drastically changed, we're going to be looking at a very different team by the end of the summer. So I think it's mostly important to look at which players do we want to bring forward versus nitpicking all the stupid mistakes they made, because there were an infinite amount of them in this match tonight.
Any you want to focus on? Because, well, first of all, I'll touch on your thoughts there, because I think we're going to get a lot of pushback if we talk about the injuries today, because, listen, they're a factor. And I think the thing, now is not the time, but there is a time and a place to have a discussion about the difference between reasons and excuses. And I think I'm not saying this, the injuries are a factor, but the injuries are not the only reason they're playing bad soccer, because they were pretty injured against Vancouver, and they were pretty injured against LAFC, and they played those teams to very close games. And Crew, they played those teams to draws. They played Crew to a 2-1 loss. That was a very close game. And those games showed progress. And that's what we talked about in these City Hub post games, was progress, and why, if we're seeing progress, even if the results aren't there, the process is what we have to focus on. Process doesn't seem to be there right now, and the injuries are there as well. Michael Bratton comes into the chat, and let's get involved in the chat. This is your show today. It always is, but more so than any time. I know people are extremely frustrated right now. I'm going to get people involved on my X at RockSTL. If you want to get involved with Will Bratton, they can drop you some chat lines if they're not here. If they don't want to get involved on the YouTube or what have you, where can they drop you a message as we go through this?
They can get me on X, Will Bratton STL, and on Instagram, STL CITY SC Views.
But jump into the chat, and I'm gonna drop Bratton's Michael Bratton here. You see it right there. Subscribe. Hit the bell button there. Make sure we're always going live, even if the games aren't that much fun. We're gonna have some fun here in the chat. Olaf, I'm done. Players have regressed badly. All of them. He tagged onto that too. Not one player has improved or seems to know even remotely what to do. No continuity. It's time to move on. Samuel Howe jumps in. 3-0. Where's the attacking offense? It is not there. It's simply not there. Samuel Howe. So, Rocchio, which team should I follow if I want to learn to love the league? Follow the Columbus
Vancouver Whitecaps.
The Vancouver Whitecaps. Yeah, I just go with Crew, because Crew are consistent. They have it. Yes, if you were building an MLS team, I think that's who you would copy if you tried to say top to bottom structure, on the field, off the field. What can we get the best of both worlds? It would be Crew. They're a fun team, and they have very good players. And that's why playing them to a 2-1 loss was a good thing where City was. So that's the team you want to watch right now if you really want to get locked into the league. City isn't necessarily that team right now. That's just a fact of the matter.
They're not. And listen, that's a hard pill to swallow in a big soccer market, in a big soccer town, a new team, and they're playing an unattractive style of the game. And not only that, they're doing it very poorly. So, you're not getting the results. You're not getting the entertainment. You're not getting the excitement. You don't have any big name players besides really Berkey. You could argue Leuven, Hardle are some big name players as well. But the dust has settled on signing guys like Nielsen and Klaus and Toyshirt and guys of that level of quality, or guys like Nielsen who can't stay healthy, or Rasmus Alm, who has a semi-high ceiling, but he can't stay healthy. So, there's no more patience with the fans on these types of players. They do not care anymore. They want results. They want entertaining matches, and they're getting neither.
Abo says they can't wait any longer. Change is needed. Effing joke to fans who pay attention and care. If you can't change the players, change the formation, change the coach, change something, damn it. And listen, they've changed the formation. It hasn't worked. That hasn't mattered. That's not a reason that things are failing right now. Is that they're not changing enough things. To Olaf's point in the presser yesterday, they're changing too many things, and I think that's why, to an earlier commenter's point, you're not seeing you're not seeing continuity, and you're seeing such a huge lack of consistency because things are constantly changing because of the injuries, because people are playing in positions that they weren't originally playing in or planned to play in, so on and so forth. You got it. But to your point, I just, all my notes that I wrote down here, the word again just keeps popping up. And that's where I get back to my point, or my opening point, and I'm going to probably harp on this point a lot. The reason why so many people were annoyed with us, including Abo, who got at me on Twitter, including why people got at us on Twitter and things like that the first 6-7 weeks of the year, is because we came on this show and said, yeah, they're not getting the results, but these are good teams for the most part, outside of the 2-0 loss to Sporting Kansas City, and they're playing them well. But and we haven't heard from Olaf. I have the presser in my ear right now. I'm gonna try to bring some stuff in from Olaf as he says it. I don't think we're going to hear from him today that they were the better team. And they didn't say it last week, and he didn't say it against Seattle because you couldn't say it. You would have been a bald-faced liar if you said they were a better team in any of those weeks. So the problem is that, yes, they've regressed, and something needs to change. You're 100% right, Abo. There's no hiding. That is the point you're at. Rubber's got to meet the road at this point. There's no other way about it right now. Injuries are one thing. That level of play multiple times, I know it's on the road against a very good team, and you have match congestion and things like that. Still, you can't keep seeing the same mistakes again and again and again and keep forgiving it.
Yeah, and I think some of this kind of goes to show, to be quite honest with you, how little I truly feel like the club and the locker room cared about this specific match. You didn't see guys out there who were hungry to correct these mistakes. You didn't see guys out there who were even hungry to win 50-50 balls. You saw guys who looked like they were playing not to get injured. You obviously saw minute caps with Ustrak coming out at halftime. You saw various other players. Olaf used all 5 available subs, I think, for the first time all season, maybe the second or third, but he doesn't usually do that. This is obviously a match congestion thing. You've got, injured players that are on the bench, like Henry Kessler, who didn't feature in this match because it's minute management. You're conserving your players. You're trying to get this squad in a place where they can actually compete, and just throwing the kitchen sink at every single match is almost nonsensical in a situation like this. Going away at Minnesota, a good team, they don't give up hardly any chances. They are a low possession team, which is bad for St. Louis because they're also a low possession team. It's not a good matchup for St. Louis. So in general, throwing the kitchen sink at this match it didn't make a lot of sense. So you start out in the first half with a team that could win, right? And then that doesn't go well. You're down at halftime. So you start just throwing on subs, and you're like, all right, let's just scout this Minnesota team and see how we can beat them in the US Open Cup. Henry Kessler should probably be fully available. Now Chris Durkin has his legs underneath him. He got some minutes. Jake Girdwood-Reich will probably not be getting significant minutes, but he did tonight. So, he's an option. So, I mean, the signs point to this match didn't really matter that much to this team. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's the right decision. I'm just saying that's kind of what I think is kind of going on in their heads. Rock, I'm curious what you think about that.
I didn't see that necessarily. That was not my takeaway, but you're not the only person who, not saying that you're the only person who has that takeaway today. I haven't seen it tonight, but I know there were a lot of people going into tonight who thought that Wednesday was more important. I love the history of the US Open Cup. I do think you have to treat how you manage cup matches and how you manage a cup run every year. It's a different situation. And I don't think this is the year to pinch your lineup in regular season in regular season matches to try to win a cup match. I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who, because of the importance of the Open Cup to St. Louis soccer, they're going to disagree with me there. That's fair. I mean, this is why, Crystal Palace today won their first major trophy in 114 years. It was the FA Cup. If I was a Crystal Palace fan, I'd still feel a little hollow. That's my thoughts on Cup football overall. My American sensibility cannot be overridden when it comes to Cup stuff. If you have the roster to play, a couple of young guys and win a Cup match against another MLS team, do it 100%. Play some starters, get the young guys some time. I just don't know when you're talking about St. Louis City, because, like, for me, Thomas Ostrak's been great, and he hasn't been a game changer necessarily, but he has been a very solid, good player for St. Louis City. And right now in these games, that's saying a lot for St. Louis City. They don't have a lot of players who are just solid, good players right now who are productive in matches, and Tomas Ostrak is one of those players for the last 3 weeks. I keep biting my lip. I'm sorry. God, that's annoying. And yet today, again, partly because of match fitness overall, maybe partly because of the match congestion, Thomas Ostrak again has to leave early tonight. Jesus Christ. I bit my tongue this time. I can't stop. Thomas Ostrak again has to leave early tonight, and the team noticeably loses a spark. When he left the game, he was leading the team in passes into the final third. He was one of the few players who had created a chance for St. Louis City. Finishing the game, Conrad Vollum finished with 9. Akil Watts got up to 7. So some other players were able to later in the game get some stuff going into there, but Tomas Ostrak was commanding the midfield, and for as much as you can give St. Louis credit, I think this might be the very first time they actually outpassed an opponent in the opposition's half. But the bottom line is they're not a good passing team when things matter. And I think, and heck, even when things don't matter, they're not a good passing team tonight. I don't know how. What's the actual number on their passing percentage? Their passing was 79%. I don't know how it's even that high, because it feels like every third pass they're turning it over. The PPDA for Minnesota, it's not out yet from the analytics sites, but I mean, it felt like their PPDA, which is passes per defensive action. It felt like it should be like 3 or 4, which, by the way, the leading team in the league is at like 10.6. So but it just, every third pass felt like it was going to a Minnesota player, which was so disappointing. And I put out these stats on Twitter. They're just key passes, passes that set up a shot. Marcel Hardle is 8th in the league. Vollum is okay. Ostrak's solid at it. Again, he didn't have a multi. He only created 1 today. Pompeu has been okay. He created 1 today. No one was good on offense. And it's disappointing that they're bad overall, but they're worse when it matters the most.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a plague all season. I mean, you think about all these, the matches that are the most frustrating, like your obviously Saturday's derby, and then your LAFC where you're dropping these points. These goals that are coming late in the game are typically off of really careless plays with the ball. Like tonight, for example, on the second goal, Conrad Vollum, just the laziest, weakest pass ever results in a turnover and in a quick goal that Berkey really didn't have much of a chance on. Those types of things have just been a plague for the St. Louis team, honestly, all season, since kind of the injury bug started to hit right after that Galaxy week or the week after, something like that. It seemed like every single week there's one of those passes, and that's the quality that that's where your PPDA gets really low, because now what's happening is City are having Kyle Hebert pass it to Timo Baumgartel, who passes it to Ostrak, who then gets collided with 3 people because those passes were too slow. The 2 passes between Baumgartel and Yarrow or Hebert, they're too slow. And Ustrak's getting clobbered, or he sends it back for the 4th pass and Berkey just boots it or something like that. Because, and that's what we saw tonight, by the way, for almost every single possession sequence out of the back was resulting in some sort of attempted progressive pass into the middle third of the pitch, a drop pass, and a boot, or an interception in the midfield. Someone turning and dribbling right into a defender, because apparently City decided they really liked physical contact with the opposing defense tonight. But
they do that a lot.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. I was like ripping my hair out with the amount of just like, oh, look, here's a guy. Let me take him on one-on-one. And my definition of taking him on one-on-one is like, here's you and here's me. I'm just going to just run right into you. And that was the plan. And as you can tell, it didn't work.
Will Bratton getting more active than St. Louis City a lot tonight.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Put me in, Olaf. Let me go to work.
A lot of reaction here on the chat. Eric Sontag from Sports Hub STL's own domesticated gambler says, please don't sack Olaf. This team is a cash cow right now.
Damn
Hashtag Fade City. Yeah.
Damn you, Eric. Point. I hate that you're so right. I hate it. He cashed on his pick tonight, and I think he had some sort of parlay going for like all the sports teams today or something like that. I want to say I saw it right before we hit go live. I was briefly looking at that, but he's been cashing on City by betting against them consistently the last few weeks. At the start of the season, when City were playing decent ball, he was struggling to hit his bets. Then when City started sucking, he caught on to that, and it's obvious it's a trend. The reason I'm talking about this is that it's a trend, and trends tend to follow suit with themselves, and St. Louis are not improving at all. They're getting worse, in my opinion, as things currently stand, at least.
Olaf in the press conference just talked about how they had a little bit more possession, but they couldn't break down the Minnesota defense. Excuse me. I was just talking about their inability to create those key passes. That's not shocking to anybody. Your thoughts today, Will, on the lineup construction? They brought a little bit more defense in, bringing JGR for his first ever start in his second ever game this season into the midfield, and they got rid of Klaus. Your thoughts on the buildup and the inability of them to have any killer mentality in the final third?
Well, let's make one thing clear, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about this last season. There's one thing that Cedric Teuscher cannot do, and that is be a solo target 9. He can be a solo striker in a certain type of system that plays to his best characteristics. But when City cannot progress the ball and the option is for Berkey to boot it up to your target 9 and try and regain possession in the midfield, you will lose that match every single time with Cedric Teuscher trying to do that, because he can't do it. He's not good at that. And it's not fair to him to try and make him do that. That's not what he's getting paid to do. So I don't understand that. In terms of getting JGR in there, listen, JGR had a rough match. He really struggled with his passing. His dribbling wasn't great, but in the type of role that he's supposed to play, I really actually didn't mind bringing in a player to fill that role in this specific match, especially in that first half. If you're managing minutes and you want to keep Klaus on the bench or something like that, and hope that it's, an even score game at halftime, you can bring him in and try and win the game late. I understand if that's the game plan with minute management. And I don't know. It's hard to complain too much about that. But JGR just didn't play well. He's not fully ready for that MLS action consistently right now, at least from what we saw tonight. Obviously, we haven't had a lot of sample size with him until tonight, but the lineup construction, I mean, I get it from a minute management perspective, like I said. So I don't know. It's a tough one. There's not a lot you can do, to be quite frank with you. Like, Mellberg literally had almost 0 options to change the lineup from last week. If you look at who was healthy, who was on the bench, almost nobody on the bench at the start of this match was fit for 90 minutes and could start this match. So, what's really his option?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. Sorry, I'm listening to the press conference here. One of my
I'm curious what he's saying.
It's not that interesting for the most part. One of the places I think that just continues just to bother me is just that they're playing the final third is just it's anemic. Player touches in the box, touches in the opposition box. They had one player with 3, and that was Chris Durkin, who's a defensive midi who came in late in the game. Exactly. This is
how did that even happen?
It's just they can't break down, and this gets back now to all phases being bad in a game where we're okay with making trade-offs for balance. And the conversation, and what I'm talking about is when Carnell was here, the trade-off was you're going to get high press, hectic, fun soccer, but it's going to expose parts of the field, and it's going to bite us in the ass sometimes. And so the opposite would be if you're going to play a slower, less high pressing system, you're just going to be a better defensive team. And that's what it was the first 5 weeks. And that's why we were all, at least for at first, okay with the lack of offense.
I was very happy with it, to be honest with you.
But now, where you don't have any hectic fun parts, and you can't bet, and you can't lock things down. And instead of having hectic fun parts that creates transition offense, but you can't break down defenses, now you have no hectic fun transition offense, and you can't break down defenses. There's nothing here to watch.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
It's a complete mosh pit of piss is kind of what it is. It's like, it's just not fun to watch. It's a liquid, disgusting mess. There's no real like structure in terms of the passing network, because you have your triangle of death on the right hand side with
shout out CCT on that.
Yeah, shout out CCT. He knows his stuff, and he predicted this one a mile away, because in terms of that triangle of death is what I'm referencing. He predicted that this would happen kind of the first time we saw this in the lineup. And it makes sense. I mean, you have guys who aren't really good at passing the ball, and especially moving off the ball and getting into passing lanes to receive, and then having a good first touch. That's like soccer. that's like the one thing you need to be able to do no matter where you're at on the pitch. And you have your guys who are not very good at doing that, all in a triangle, where that triangle is supposed to be one of your key progressive passing networks into the middle third of the pitch, so you can enter the attacking third after that. So how are you going to enter the attacking third if you cannot enter the middle third? You don't. And so we see a lot of terrible attack and a lot of no attack in general. So
fair enough. And Charlie Smith says empty seats at home. Well, they have 2 games to grab some attention. And the thing here about St. Louis fans is while they are very reactionary, it does work both ways. So if they win a U.S. Open Cup game, and if they can then go and beat up on Kroenke's group of boys over in Colorado, then you can come back and hopefully then beat up on the Earthquakes. And now maybe you have some goodwill. So there is a window here to win some games, get some goodwill. Unfortunately, you're playing a tough Loons team, obviously, in the U.S. Open Cup on Wednesday. You're playing in the altitude on short rest against Colorado, who is a solid team, who you did run well offensively, but I don't know where that offense is that was here in week 1. So I'm not sure if you can lean on that at all. So it's not going to be easy, but there is a runway to not have what I think Charlie Smith is kind of calling here correctly, which is going to be maybe the second time ever we don't hear another City Park sellout or Energizer Park sellout, because fans are frustrated, and I get that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand the desire to not want to come to some of those types of matches when you're not really expecting great results. The one thing I'll say,
I mean, at this point, the expectation is hard to sell, in my opinion, because it's again that run of Crew and LAFC and everything, and in Vancouver is just, we just feel completely like we're watching a different team than the team that played those 3 matches, and that's just highly disappointing. And I'm not sure why City fans would want to be bought in right now, considering that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I do want to harp on your point about kind of the way being reactionary works both ways. Because like you said, if they beat Minnesota on Wednesday in the U.S. Open Cup, obviously that adds another match to the schedule. And that's a whole separate issue. But in general, then they go to that Colorado match. Whatever happens there, if they come home against San Jose at 1:30 p.m. on a Saturday, that's not a majorly difficult match on paper, you could say. And it's going to be on a Saturday afternoon. If it's not blazing hot, I could still see the fans coming out to that match. And if they do come out and City win that match, all of a sudden you're kind of back in it, per se. And I keep throwing quotes around everything because everything is so superficial with this team right now. There's nothing that's like, this will happen if this happens. That is there. Everything is so dependent on numerous variables. But the one good thing about all of this is that I want to remind folks that at the end of the day, we're watching Major League Soccer. And what is one thing that's really bad about Major League Soccer, Rock, but that is really convenient to a St. Louis City SC side who has 11 points so far?
They're only 6 points out of a playoff spot, technically.
It's extremely easy to sneak into the playoffs late in the season. You need like 5 or 6 good matches at the end of a season to sneak.
And apparently, you can just you can be the worst team in the league and get a contract extension.
Yeah, Greg Vanny, that was kind of okay. Listen, this is we could get into a whole conversation.
No, we can't get it. No, we can't get into another team that sucks. We have our own team that's terrible that we have to talk about. One quick point from Samuel Howe that he threw out: injury creates playing time for youth. No, yes, and that's why JGR played tonight and didn't play well. He's the youngest player on the active roster. Obviously, players like Mekhi Joyner, who are from the youth roster, I'm not counting them. I guess I could say I could say there's probably a more technical term than active roster, but you know what I'm saying. JGR non-academy players who are available on the roster. Is the youngest player at just over 20 years old, and he looked like a 20-year-old tonight. That's the fact of the matter. Olaf has failed to put players in the best position to succeed. And maybe more so than anything else, that is his greatest failure through the start of this season and through this 10-game winless streak. Because I think we get way too up in arms about things like formation and tactics and scheme and mindset even. But a coach just you can't keep screwing it up the way that he has, and he just keeps putting players in the worst positions possible. He plays JGR when he shouldn't. He plays Jean de Silva as a sub for Pompeu when Pompeu's in left wing back. And it's one thing when you have a guy like Celio Pompeu, who apparently, even though some people disagree, and maybe Ostrak, and maybe to Olaf's point, he doesn't do it to the level he wants it. But what I saw Celio Pompeu do running up and down the field and tracking back as a left wing back over the last 2 games compared to what I saw Jean de Silva do when he got subbed in for Celio Pompeu, world of difference. Because Gressel walks past. He could have walked past Jean de Silva on that third goal, and Silva didn't even look at him, didn't even think about running back to the box to try to play any defense. Is it Jean de Silva's fault, or is he a striker / winger being played at left wing back, and therefore is it the coach's fault? I would say the
latter.
coach.
It's the latter for me, 100%.
And so that's more so than anything else, because I think everything else comes down to personal preference and probably a little bit of subjectivity. Objectivity, though, he has not put his players in the best position to succeed. He knows more than I do, but when he makes comments like Conrad Vollum is better in the midfield than at wingback, I question one. I disagree with the statement, but also just as you look at lineup constructions, he's pretty good at wingback. Wouldn't he be better for the team at wingback? And those are the kind of decisions that, in my opinion, I've consistently started to ask questions. And in the first 6 or 7 weeks, it was like, okay, what's the deal here? Trying to feel it out. And now, in some of these areas, I'm officially kind of confused. And that's just not where you want to be. And again, part of that is that he can't play his starting roster, that he's starting X that he should play. And that complicates a bunch of things. But I like that he finally put Hebert in the back line and changed up the wingback play. But today, I just don't know how that was the lineup he settled on. And I'm still a little confused, and I'm not trying to harp on it because the formation, I just think it's odd that he is failing to put players in the best position to succeed. You were talking about Teuscher today as the sole striker. A lot of people have brought up Teuscher's having to play out in the right wing where he's been best when he tucks inside or behind the striker, and they've been trying to do that, but just the way the formation works, because they have no ability to get width on the right side from their right wing back, because when it's Akil Watts, he doesn't do great things with the ball in the offensive side of the field. So you have to play Teuscher out there, but he's not good out there. And they played Hartel out there one time, out wide on the right. Worked pretty well. Haven't gone back to that, though, for some reason. So I'm sitting here confused, and I don't think I'm the only one, nor do I think it's because I'm missing something here.
No, I don't think it's because you're missing something. I really think it's been poor decision making. I mean, like we've been kind of harping on this whole time. Like Jean de Silva, first of all, Lutz even said he was kind of brought in to do that right wing striker role kind of deal.
Also, what can I hate to interrupt you, but can I just do something really quick again? Because this is a little bugaboo of mine, and I need to get it out here because look at John De Silva's heat maps on SofaScore or wherever you want to find him. He is a left winger and striker. He has never played a lot of minutes or gotten a lot of touches on the right side of the field. Never. Yeah. Not in any MLS career, not in the minutes that you can track on SofaScore from the other leagues that he was in before the MLS. He doesn't touch the ball on the right side very often. Why are they having him do it here if everything Olaf says about players is we bring players in and we play them where they're comfortable? So has John De Silva been playing in uncomfortable spots his entire career? Is that what I'm meant to know? Is that what I'm being told right now? Because I'm confused again, and I have information in front of me that tells me the opposite of what they're saying.
Right.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
No, I mean, everything feels backwards. Like I said, let's kind of talked about putting him on that right-hand side. Obviously, we know he's left side dominant. From his past, Mellberg ends up not putting him on either, and instead putting him at left wing back in this match. So you have, I mean, nothing makes sense. Literally nothing makes sense about a lot of the decisions that are being made, and especially that one. Here's another thing that doesn't make any sense. Why are you putting Jean De Silva at left wing back, a position that he cannot play defensively, when you have Jay Reed sitting on the bench?
Oh, and for all I know, that because they might have been making, the plan might have been to flat things out and make it a back four. Maybe there was more of a 4-3-3 or 4 whatever you want to call it. So maybe somebody else missed it. Maybe Hebert was supposed to be wider left, and I'm blaming the wrong person on that goal. I could be wrong. That's what it looked like. And if that's the case, it's a mistake and it looked bad.
I mean, it's possible, but at the end of the day, I mean, I feel like when you need to cycle minutes and get guys on the pitch, why are you not? You have a guy who's just come back from injury, Jay Reed. He's more than healthy now. For like 2 weeks, he's been fully healthy. He's played with City too. He's gotten some minutes with the first team last week. So why is Jay Reed not getting minutes at the end of this match at left wing back? Let him get comfortable with this team. Let him see if he can have an impact. Jean De Silva, putting him in at left wing back is just going to set him up for failure. And even if it's switching to a 4-4-2, I still think you're setting him up for failure, because I really think Jean De Silva's best position is in a 3-4-3 in that high winger role. I don't really think he's going to be successful centrally in the midfield at all. And by centrally, I mean centrally vertically, not horizontally across the pitch. I don't think he's going to be very successful there. So I don't know.
Michael Bratton says send a box to Gruden. Yeah, that's one way to change things around.
It's worked for the Cardinals.
I was able to get a lot of reaction early from a lot of pretty ticked off STL City fans on my X account. So I'm just going to read a couple of them here, talking about in response to my Jean De Silva criticism on the Gressel goal. Daniel said, I have a feeling that some players are not playing in the position where they perform best. It's like they're setting them up for failure. I had not read that tweet yet, but obviously I agree with that.
Already said that.
Yeah, we can roll on from there. I agree. From Money Mike here on the X, if this were basketball, all would be benched until they learn to move without the ball. This is CYC League S. Come on, City, you're better than this. If not in skill, how about determination and the pride of being a professional athlete? Yeah, the last thing I think, throw it out the window. I just think if you're sitting at home, just throw the whole are they trying, do they care about their job thing out of the window. You can't quantify it, and you're most likely wrong about how they feel about and the effort level they put into the game today. Other team on the other side of the field also getting paid to make them look like shit. That's why they get paid a lot of money, is to make other professionals look bad at their job. That's the sport. That's the point. You can argue that they're not as talented, but I think arguing effort and determination and pride of their job is just, it's a slippery slope that we do not need to put ourselves on and slip down to, because it's probably covered in shit. But you're right about the overall premise. It's bad. And I do want to pass along Matt Baker, who's tweeting from the presser. who said that Mellberg credited Minnesota heavily in their form, quality, and shape, said the game plan was to be solidly organized defensively with one striker and to not concede while allowing more control of the game. They kind of did that for a little bit of the game. Mellberg said the City were more vulnerable in the second half as they opened things up and were too open, especially for the third goal. He didn't like the connectivity of the group. While even in possession, they didn't create much danger in possession. He also said he believes in the players he put on the pitch today. As we are
it's the same rehearsed line he said like 4 times now. Have you noticed that? Verbatim. What? I believed in the players I put on the pitch today. That's this.
Has he used that before?
Regurgitated that line like 4 times now. The exact same line, word for word.
Okay, that's
coaches. Dude, the robot.
Coaches like to lean on stuff. That's
what's
not
going on
to me.
Behind the beard. This is what we need to know. There's nothing going on in his head.
Cameron Freeman, in response to me kind of talking about the leash or the goodwill for this team with the injuries, he says, how are you supposed to put together a team with these players? You heard Olaf. They're not even fit enough to play a game. Speaking of our friend over at Chat City Tactics, he had a commenter who put together the stats, just the difference between City when they have a lot of starters playing, 8 or more, versus less than 8 starters playing, and they've taken points in the games where they've had more than 8 starters play, and they don't take points in games where starters don't play. That's the bottom line. So again, the difference between excuse and reason, there's a reason they're struggling without some of their best players. That's bottom line. Excuse would be saying that it's the only reason they suck tonight. It's not.
Yeah, no. An excuse would be like justifying losing and justifying a bad performance. Like just on, you were never going to win that match. You can win any match on any given day with any roster realistically. I mean, this is St. Louis. This is the same team or the same city who saw, the U.S. the U.S. men's national team have the upset in the World Cup in 1950. This is not anything new. It's not a new concept. It's not it would be an excuse to say that the roster put out on the pitch today could not win the match. It's a reason to show the obvious regression associated with missing a lot of your starters. So I just wanted to hammer that point a little bit.
Aaron Ed in the chat, then why not practice creating? Are you
sure they are?
Are you really telling me, Aaron, that you don't think they're practicing creating? Like, of course they're practicing creating. They're again, the other team's practicing defense. And right now they can't connect passes and they can't get Marcel Hardle the ball in dangerous areas. And even when they are, he's playing too uneven. Again, he's 8th in the league in chances created with 31, top 10 in the entire MLS. With this offense that cannot create for the most part is still able to create shots, primarily because they have a guy like Marcel Hardle who is in top 10 in shots created in the entire league. Today, until he gets pulled out in the 79th minute, I think it was, he had 0. And so do you want to blame that on tactics? Do you want to play that on positioning? Do you want to play that on Marcel Hardle having a bad game? I think all 3 of them factored in today. He was playing higher than he usually has, more where you saw him play last year. By the way, Marcel Hardle, as I talk about him right now, is in the press conference right now in my ear. He's saying that more people talked in the locker room today, that you're hearing more opinions, or you might be saying on the field, more that he heard more opinions, more guys are talking, more guys are speaking up. Again, they care, as I'm bringing in Hardle's comments from the press conference. So I just think, of course, they're trying it. Then why the F do we look lost trying to pass the ball upfield? Again, I think because practice is one thing, the game is another one, and the one of the biggest factors is there's an entire team trying to stop you during the game and not in practice. They're practicing create. I can't like give a premise. I can't even accept the premise they're not practicing creating. It's just that 4th or 5th pass every possession, the press is effective against them. Somebody's on their ass. They try to pass it back and they turn it over. They're a bad passing team. We've been saying this since like week 5. They're a bad passing team. Full stop. And right now, they don't have one of the best players on the team at moving the ball in Edu Leuven, and that's hurting them Clearly a guy like Marcel Hardle has the talent to do well. He had a very bad game.
Yeah. And that happens. It's not excusable, but it does happen. And Aaron had saying it's a talent issue. In terms of players that are on the pitch, when you're running your depth and you have roster constraints, you can't pay everybody what you're paying Marcel Hardle. So you can't afford to have amazing players that come off the bench when you have injuries. Yes, it's going to be a talent thing. It's always going to be a talent thing until you have a young guy who steps up. And City aren't having that right now. They don't even have young guys who are really getting minutes for the most part. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Eggplant emoji coming in saying ownership decreed this a playoff team. Will they spend during the summer transfer window to make good on that promise? I can guarantee you that things will change in the summer transfer window. I can guarantee you that players will enter and players will leave. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money on that. If you want to bet on that yourselves, you should talk to Eric Sontag with Domestic Gamblers. They do a great job with us here at Sports Hub STL. Things will definitely change.
Or, you know what? If you want to bet on it a little bit, well, how about go to our friends DraftKings and their new app, I should say, DraftKings Pick Six. Baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick Six. Here's the thing: just take more on the Cardinals stats and then do less on St. Louis City stats. Think of DraftKings Pick Six as your fastball right down the middle of meatball. I like to think of it as a Waino fastball to Derek Jeter in the All-Star game because it's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select two or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick Six is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, of course, and more. Cash in on your baseball knowledge, heck, any of your sports knowledge. I love playing the NBA plays. New players get $50 in Pick Six credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick Six app and use code STL Sports. Right there on the screen, you see it right there. Code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick Six credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only from Pick Six with DraftKings. The crown is yours. And let me tell you guys really quickly, I'm going to put together an NBA run because I just love it for Sunday. It's my favorite, my Nuggets, even though they're owned by you know who, going up against the Thunder, trying to seal a win here. I'm getting a promo play here for Jamal Murray. I'm going to take more than 17.5 points on Murray, and I'm going to take more on points, rebounds, and assists for Nikola Jokic because he always shows up in Game 7. I'm putting my play on NBA. You can put your play on baseball because it's baseball season and it's DraftKings Pick Six.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
Uh-oh. Did I lose Will? I think I might have lost Will. Will is working on his camera. Start trying to, his camera's not working right now. So while Will's trying to fix his camera, I want to tell everybody about our friends over at Hot Shots. 35 years. They are the absolute best. I've been going to Hot Shots pretty consistently since I graduated from college, got back to St. Louis in 2013 and realized that this was the place to be at Hot Shots. And they've been around for 35 years, just a little bit older than I am. And it's the place to go. And it's going to be the place to be coming up on June 1st. All of the Sports Hub STL postgame shows are brought to you in part by Hot Shots, and they invite you to come out to their St. Charles location on Sunday, June 1st to celebrate their 35th anniversary. The fun starts at noon with a parking lot party featuring the Budweiser Clydesdales. Prizes will be given away all day. There's a dart tournament at noon, a bags tournament at 2, plus you're going to have the St. Louis City celeb bartenders there, St. Louis City fans, and a shot to win Hot Shots tacos for a year in the Hot Shots taco eating contest. Me and Randy are going to be out there for that for the morning show. Congratulations to Hot Shots on 35 years. Hot Shots, St. Louis' home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. And you wouldn't think about it, but I'm just going to suggest it here. Next time you go to Hot Shots, get the nachos, double pico de gallo, and then you can thank me later next time you see me because that's what you're going to have to do. And it looks like we got Will Bratton back. And oh my God, the camera's looking incredible. Did you
I
just
don't know what was going on
optics while we were gone?
I went on a techno wizard run. I did the impossible. I'm doing what Olaf Mellberg cannot do, and I fixed a problem. So
we're gonna redo the show. Okay, we're gonna scrap this and be back here in 20 minutes. Jesus, Will, you actually look good. Ailro, I'm just going to go with that one here. As a Minnesota fan, I was surprised how much you guys sucked. That was the most dominant Minnesota looked all year. Didn't they look more dominant when they completely wiped the floor with Miami? I thought that was the most dominant that Minnesota looked. That's just me. I thought so. That was a 4-0 game. Maybe it was 4-1. Either way, yeah, they kicked our butts today, and they got to be feeling pretty good going into Wednesday.
Yeah, Minnesota they're a good team. I mean, you've got some explosive talent, especially on the front. I mean, Yeboah didn't even play. And I mean, I don't know. Minnesota's a great team. You've got a great keeper in the net. I wasn't totally surprised to see Minnesota dominate at home at Allianz Field. It wasn't a shocker to me. But yeah, I agree. I understand how someone around the league could see the changes made last summer, could see the offseason window. St. Louis obviously relatively comfortable with the roster, not a lot of changes. Brought in one good player in Conrad Vollum and a player who has a very high ceiling in Timo Baumgartel, and then they suck. I can understand how that's surprising. Yeah, I don't want to talk about Anthony Marcanic. That's a tough one for St. Louis fans, because let me fill you in on something, Elro, that you might not know as a Minnesota fan. Every single player besides like Joaquini and Adeniran that leaves St. Louis has just been on a tear this season. Every single one. I mean, AZ Jackson scoring goals. Anthony Marcanic has 2 goals for you guys at Minnesota this season. Nookvi Thorson is tearing it up for the team he's on loan to right now. I mean, there's numerous players. John Nelson from the original St. Louis City squad in 2023. He's been doing great with the LA Galaxy for 2 seasons now. I mean, yeah, Kojima with DC. That's the probably the one that hurt me the most. Obviously, Indiana Vasilov with the Philadelphia Union doing well, scoring a goal recently as well. It is a problem because that makes you think that St. Louis are not bringing out the best in their players, and that's a whole separate conversation to be had.
I'm sad. Yeah. I'm sad because you bring up Anthony Marcanic, who was much maligned here despite being an extremely solid player. You're seeing the quality he can bring. He'd be even better, in my opinion, in the system that they're playing this year. They could use wingbacks. I always thought Marcanic would be a better wingback than he would be a left back. Yeah, that one hurts. Elro kicked me right in the stones on that one. That one really hurt. Aaron Ed, it all went wrong when we protected Indy instead of Kojima in the expansion draft. Okay, so let's do this really quick. While we're here, let's do this. No. Because
I agree. No,
you get $50,000 when you lose a player in the expansion draft. You got $1 million from Indiana Vasilov. So
and how much did Kojima sell for when they flipped him? Half of what we sold Vasilov for, $500,000 to DC.
Yeah. So I just think, and yeah, Kojima's younger. Probably does he have a higher ceiling than Indiana Vasilov? We didn't see enough of him for me to really dictate that. Vasilov obviously is a solid MLS player. Does Kojima have a higher ceiling than that? I don't know. The history of the Super Draft tells me as a mid-round pick, he doesn't. But we could be completely wrong because he's a freaking soccer savant and he knows the game better than a lot of coaches do. And so he might completely break the scale of mid-round MLS Super Draft players. I was a huge fan of Jose Kojima. I honestly think that Jose Kojima is the mistake that I actually criticize Lutz for. A lot of people want to criticize Lutz for a lot of other mistakes. I have somebody in my DM, a good friend of mine, talking about how they haven't got a domestic transfer correct yet. Kojima's the only one that in the moment I had problems with, and it has been proven to be a problematic move. That one, 100%, I'm with you. Criticize that one all up, down, left, right, center. That one still bothers me. There's other players they could have left. They could have left unprotected. The designated player that no other team was going to take, and if they would have been doing you a favor. As much as I love João Klaus, just financially, if they would have taken him, it would have done you a world of good. Why not leave him unprotected. Same thing with maybe one of the defenders. You could have left other players unprotected that they didn't, and I still am the one thing I'm bothered is that Lutz was so laissez-faire and sounded like he was. We're good on the expansion draft. We're fine. He had no worries about what was going to happen in the expansion draft, and he lost Jose Kojima, and it hasn't been great. Yeah, that one's going to bother me for a little bit, and Marcanic bothers me too. The AZ Jackson and Marcanic one. As much as I like them, as much as I was confident that they could be better players, they were struggling, and they were struggling players on a struggling team, and there's always going to be casualties there. So those ones hurt a little bit different. Kojima, that I think was a mistake by the front office in the moment, and that's what's clear. We can't be doing this hindsight stuff in the moment. I think Kojima was a mistake.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also agree with the sentiment that AZ and Anthony Marcanic were not nearly as grave of mistakes. In fact, I would say AZ was not a mistake at all. I would say that was
probably not
the correct move. Marcanic, with hindsight, knowing the system that they wanted to build, if Lutz knew that this was the system he wanted to build, a 3-5-2 kind of system, then maybe you could argue it was a mistake if he knew that at the time. Otherwise, it's hindsight. And if not, then it's not a mistake either. So, I mean, it's hard to criticize Lutz considering how much he's been able to do in terms of finding players on free transfers, bringing guys in for cheap, making, a couple of profits on some players like Joachini and Vasilev. He hasn't really made any terrible mistake at all that I can think of. I don't know. I don't really think he's made any kind of a grave mistake. You could argue some of the signings weren't ideal, but in terms of contractually, I mean, nobody's getting overpaid on this roster. Half the team's probably being underpaid, quite frankly, and would get paid higher on other teams.
Klaus is being overpaid, but he's you can't change it, so it's
right.
Not,
I'm talking when they sign the contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Billy J, also a protected DP, so
yeah. Billy J comes in on the X. I can accept losses while we show promise or even hints towards a plan to improve, but there is so much hopelessness right now that the goodwill is gone. It's tough to disagree with that. Thomas Welch, I'd accept teams being better than us. I'll never accept teams working harder than us. Again, I think a lot of times when you're watching a game, your team's getting their butt kicked. Not being as good looks a lot like you're not trying. And I just think they weren't nearly as good tonight. Ben on the X, when pointing out that Hardle didn't have any chances created tonight, staring at that black hole in the midfield that was JGR and Wallem for the culprit, the lack of ball progression. I mean, I thought Ostrak was a pretty good connecting tissue. I think. Yeah. I mean, Wallem's been pretty solid. I didn't jump out tonight, with a good or a bad game necessarily. So I wouldn't. That's not where I think the issue is. That's not, I think, the primary culprit. I'm not saying that's not an issue. I don't think that's where the issue is coming in. We haven't gotten into many X's and O's talk today because it's been such a crappy game, Will, but your thoughts on where maybe the lack of disconnect is from the tactical side for St. Louis City SC? Because for me, my big overarching hypotenuse right now, hypothesis. Hello, hypothesis.
School is out, Rock.
Okay, so what you have is you got a right angle here. And then you got so
a squared plus b squared.
Yeah, exactly. So my hypothesis is when you can't pass the ball very well, you can't do anything else in this game, and so you're a bad passing team, you're a bad soccer team. That's pretty much where my analysis goes right now. I can get deeper in other things, but I don't want to right now. If you want to, I leave the floor open to you.
The only thing I'll say is in the first 45 minutes, I made a post about this on X. And if you're not following Rock and I there, you should do so to get our live thoughts during the match and kind of get yourself thinking about things you want to bring to the post-game show. But I did tweet out or post on X. It's not Twitter anymore. At halftime,
call it Twitter. Call whatever you want.
JGR through 45 minutes, 7 losses of possession, 1 for 4 ground duels won, 0 for 1 attempted dribbles, and 11 for 17 passes. And then Akil Watts through 4. And by the way, he was the lowest rated player on the pitch via SofaScore at 6.4, which is That is dark orange color, 6.4. You're getting into very poor territory. Akil Watts was the second lowest rated player on the pitch at 6.5, I believe. His stats through 45 minutes, the same stats, 11 losses of possession. 11 losses of possession. So the reason I'm bringing this up and reading this out is because you cannot be a good passing team when your central midfielders cannot pass the ball and lose the ball every time they do receive it. With 18 losses of possession between the two of them, obviously their defensive duties weren't great. They went 1 for 5 ground duels, won. They were a little better in the air. And then 1 attempted dribble between the two of them. Obviously that's Oosterak's job. So that makes more sense.
By the way, the attempt, I just need to focus it because I was watching the game on my phone at a wedding for the first half. And one of the few plays that I really remember from the first half is that the one dribble from JGR, he got it in the back half. He dribbled it straight to a Minnesota player. I mean, beelined it right. Just here you go, buddy. Here you go.
That's what I
run.
That was his one dribble. That's what I was imitating.
And to that point, I just want to bring it up while we're rattling off those stats. Take what you will from post-game pressures. I know some people don't take anything from them. Olaf noted JGR did a lot of things right in his first start of 2025 and was strong in dueling. Olaf, generally speaking about his players, said he believes in the players he put on the pitch today. I already read that part. But yeah, so apparently he thought JGR had a solid game.
I mean, okay. I think the tone in your voice as you said that last sentence there kind of tells the whole story. I think Olaf is protecting his player to the press, and I respect that. He did not have a solid game. The stats do not say he had a solid game. Nothing says he had a solid game. The eye test doesn't say he had a solid game. So, I love a coach standing up for his players to the press. No problem with that. I have no problem with that. But yeah, you can't take anything from that. But back to what I was saying before was you can't have Rock mentioned if you're a bad passing team, you're a bad soccer team. When your central midfielders can't pass the ball and every time they receive it, they're dispossessed, you're a bad soccer team because that is your distribution to the rest of the pitch. They're the most integral players to your passing network, unless you're a kick and chase team, which isn't really going to be effective in MLS most of the time, unless you're LAFC and you have Denny Buenga to do the work for you, but we're not. So you're a bad soccer team when you're failing in that middle.
I just don't know how in a game that they actually had more possession, in a game they actually had more opposition half passes, which I do not think those two, I think the possession things happen once or twice. I do not think they've outpassed a team in the opposition half. Even without possession, and this is just all you need to know about them just not being an efficient passing team. I threw out the stats on X. You can look at those. We talked about the inability to get Toy Shirt involved. He only had 2 touches in the box as the sole striker who played the majority of the game. They outpassed Minnesota 192 to 174 in the opposition's half. And yet Minnesota had twice as many pass touches in the opposition's box. And so it's an inability to get the ball in any sort of dangerous area. And part of that is City having a wide open back line in certain moments in transition. You know, part of that's players not tracking back like Jande Silva and allowing an easy touch in the box from Gressel for that third goal. But it's inexplicable that they still are just getting dominated in all those points. And to your point, it's the midfield just isn't able to progress the ball enough. And I also just don't think it's the midfield's problem fault completely because, again, JGR didn't have a good game, but it's not entirely his role. Ostrak had a solid game. Hardle wasn't good enough. But I think and you know, Wallen was okay. But I think part of it is that when you're not getting the width with the wing backs, there's the outlet isn't there. That passing triangle that becomes so important that we talk about all the time, those passing triangles that need to happen in the wider channels aren't going to be created if the wing backs aren't consistently able to get involved. And the problem is that Akil Watts shouldn't be touching the ball so often in the final third. He shouldn't be playing wingback, and he shouldn't be playing wingback in a role that needs him to be such a key part of the offense. One of the few ways that City has been able to build up offense, not just this year, but the entirety of the existence of the club has been down the left flank. And However it's happened, it has happened with a combination of 3 players, which has been a fullback, a midfielder, and an attacking player. In year 1, it was, when he got here, it was the aforementioned Anthony Marcanic. I'm going to start freaking crying. It was Anthony Marcanic, Edward Leuven, and Celio Pompeu, or Indiana Vasilev, or God, who was on the left wing a lot in year 1?
Thor was sometimes out there. Not in year 1.
I guess that Klaus would be ranging out there, and sometimes, or Nico would be ranging out there when they had the 2 strikers formation. But anyhow, it was just left back, center midi that usually sat on the left side, i.e. Edward Leuven, and forward. And then they were also playing, they were playing some diamond there, so it naturally facilitated a left flank dominant thing. And then in the second year, similar thing, especially early. Left back early on was Anthony Marcanic, Edward Leuven, Celio Pompeu. Then Pompeu gets hurt, Marcanic struggles, team struggles, and they have to go to different things. They change out the build-up. The build-up becomes a lot more Edward Leuven, kind of making a back 5. And we don't see as much as the left-handed stuff late in the season because they didn't have the left backs, they didn't have the left wingers, and things changed. Then we come back to this year, and we get it again. Conrad Vollum as the left winger, or as the left back, Edward Leuven on the left side, and then Marcel Hardle, and then Celio Pompeu or Simon Bescher or one of the attackers. We consistently see this 3-man triangle originate on the left side for the last 2.5 years. And when you don't have those on the wings, and when you only have them on the left wing, and there's nothing on the right wing consistent, you're not dangerous. And that was something Olaf talked about in the postgame tonight. They're not dangerous. Even when they have the ball, even in a game where they threatened more, they had more passes in the opposition half, they had more possession. When it came down to it, when it came down to the nitty-gritty moments where it was put the ball into the box when you have it in the final third, they were completely unable to do so. And because of that, they had no chance to win this game, whether or not, whether the defense was able to hold Minnesota to 1 goal. They would have lost this game 1-0 because they were doing nothing to penetrate that Minnesota defense. And that has been a problem since day 1 of this season. And whether you want to focus on that or the fact that the defense has become untenable, that's, I think, probably a personal preference for each fan.
Yeah, and listen, the sad reality is it's not really bound to change unless Edward Leuven comes back and St. Louis find a way to kind of progress up that right-hand side, ideally with Tomas Totland, and specifically the ability of Henry Kessler to step up into the midfield and be that passing outlet to guys like Tomas Totland, Edward Leuven, Marcel Hardle, what have you, in that midfield. Nothing's going to change. Nothing will change. Ustrak maybe will step in and do a good job here or there, kind of like we've seen him do. He's done a decent job into that midfield. But in the grand scheme of things, nothing's going to change. And the only way that you get the change is you get healthy or you change kind of, I don't know, Mellberg kind of has some options where he could reconfigure some things about what to do with the ball in certain situations. Obviously, the team is trying to build out of the back right now. Well, obviously that's not working because you don't have ball handling center back. So then you problem solve and you kind of try and engineer your way out of it. But I don't think that would be a very successful route. I don't really think anything is bound to change outside of gathering a confidence and momentum booster associated with getting your best players back on the pitch. Because like Rock and I have talked about, in 3 matches this season, and by the way, we played 14 for those who are not counting, I am. We've played 14. In 3 of them, we've had at least 8 starters, like preferred starters on the pitch. 2 of them we've had 8, and 1 of them we've had 10. That's 3 matches. In those 3 matches, you got 2 wins and a draw, 7 out of 9 possible points. And I mean, that tells the story. We've talked about it a lot, the difference between an excuse and a reason, but that's just where you're at. And nothing's realistically going to change. Firing Mellberg right now would not change anything. If you want to fire him once the squad is healthy, okay, that's fine. If you want to, if Lutz decides to pull his bratwurst and slap it on the table and fire Mellberg, whatever, that's his decision to make. I'm not really going to think one way or the other about it. But firing him now, this isn't hockey. This isn't football. Just magically changing the coach isn't going to immediately course correct your entire season. You might get a new coach bump for a game or 2. That's about all you're going to get. So patience is the virtue here, and understanding that the season is not over, but it's not in a good spot, and it could very well be over in, after the summer window or around the time of the summer window if things are not improving. And you're going to see a roster shakeup. So there's things to look forward to if it's not necessarily a winning culture in the short term. Listen, 10 games winless. You've just lost 0-3 on the road. You blew a lead against your rivals. You drew there at home. I mean, everything sounds bad right now, and it is, and there's no way around that. So that's where you got to be at as a City fan right now. You just got to hang in there.
Your thoughts going into Wednesday, a replay against Minnesota United up in Minnesota again, another away match, this time for the round of 16 in the U.S. Open Cup. Any hope here for this match, Will Bratton?
Yeah, I think if Henry Kessler is fit to start in this match, I think it's completely different. I think you get Klaus up top, and I think you have Kessler in the back. All of a sudden, you're able to progress the ball in the midfield, and you have your target option up high if you do end up needing to dump it long at times. And I also think that we scouted Minnesota very well in this match. We saw that when they sat in that low block defending, they're very comfortable doing that. They don't like having possession of the ball, just like St. Louis. You can weaponize that by maybe not dumping it to Joao Klaus, but letting Henry Kessler walk the ball right up the middle of the pitch when Minnesota are kind of hanging back in that lower block. And you can have him distribute to your guys like Celio Pompeo, Jande Silva, whoever is out on these flanks, and just whip balls into the box. I mean, just look for Klaus, look for Teuscher to find a ricochet at his feet, just like we know is his bread and butter of playing this game. That is how you beat a team like Minnesota on the road in a situation like that. It's just relentlessly throwing balls into the box and capitalizing on any loose change that drops. And you have to stay defensively sound, and Henry Kessler can bring that. I think Timo Baumgartel has shown that he can, especially when paired with a top quality defender like Henry Kessler, he can help provide that as well. If Ustrak has a good shift in the midfield of helping distribute, Henry Kessler works to him, and all of a sudden you have a passing network. I really think the addition of Henry Kessler could be the key and could provide a beacon of hope in this U.S. Open Cup match. It's obvious that minutes were managed. It's obvious that they value this U.S. Open Cup match. They're not throwing it out the window. They're going to put their best 11 on the pitch. I think that's very clear. Whether you think this match was a throwaway tonight or not is a different story, but it's obvious that minutes were managed for the upcoming matches. So if you're looking at the U.S. Open Cup match and you're deciding whether or not you should watch it, I would encourage you to watch it. That is where I'll end that. I'm not even going to say I think we're going to win, because I'd probably be lying to you, but I would encourage you to at least watch it. And then tune into the Sports Hub STL postgame show, City Hub postgame show with Rock and I. We will be both in the studio next time, where Rock is right now, that gorgeous Sports Hub STL studio that you know and love from watching Randy and Brooke down there on Fridays and all sorts of other shows that we do at Sports Hub STL. We will be there. Come and join us. It'll be a great time.
And of course, these shows always brought to you by our fans at Hot Shots, home of the STL sports fans since 1990. All the games, all the times. Check them out at hotshotsnet.com. Find out which location is closest to you. And of course, get on the DraftKings Pick 6 app over at Sportsbook, over at DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings, the crown is yours down there in the corner. Thank you so much for joining me today, Will, and everyone in the chat. You guys killed it as usual. I know things are a little bit rough, but we will be back on Wednesday to talk about the reactions to the round of 16 matches. St. Louis City takes on Minnesota United again, back in Minnesota. Round of 16 for the U.S. Open Cup. We'll be covering it right here on the City Hub post game. I want to say thank you to everyone listening. I also want to say thoughts and prayers out from Sports Hub STL to everyone in the St. Louis area. I know a lot of people are still affected by power issues. I'm personally broadcasting from the studio tonight because I'm in an area that's affected by power issues, and I have power. I'm very lucky. Very thankful I have power, but I don't have internet right now. That's why I'm here in the studio. But people are not nearly as lucky as I am. Obviously, there's people without power. There's people without their homes. There's people without water. There's people without family members because there's people who passed away. So stay safe, St. Louis, when things like that happen. Credit to the people that I was working with yesterday at KMOX who did an incredible job in their coverage to get people safe and out of the storm areas. Obviously, to everyone out there whose life has been affected by that, we're with you. And if you need any help, reach out and we'll see if we can give you some help here at Sports Hub STL. We love St. Louis. That's why we're here. Talk about St. Louis sports, talk about things happening in St. Louis. So we hope everyone is okay out there in St. Louis. Again, we will talk to you on Wednesday. For Will Bratton, I'm Matthew Rocchio, and this has been the City Hub postgame on Sports Hub STL, presented by Hot Shots and DraftKings Sportsbook.